Here's something.
Man, that is just so incredibly sad. Folks, that is the home of liberal South Carolina Judge Diane Goodstein. Her home caught on fire on Saturday, October 4th. Apparently, there was an explosion before the fire. It burst into flames, and the house is completely gone. It is now being investigated as an act of arson. A liberal judge in South Carolina. And I want to give you some more details on the story because it gets very weird. Now, I want to preface that we never speculate on this channel without knowing the facts. So I'm going to present you threats of information which let you think about the injuring three. An inferno ripped through the waterfront home of a South Carolina judge and her Democratic ex-senator husband on Saturday, leaving 3 people hospitalized, according to authorities and reports. Circuit Court Judge Diane Goodstein's Edisto Beach home went up in flames around midday, sending plumes of black smoke into the air and forcing her husband, Arnold Goodstein, to jump from the first floor to escape the blaze, which he sustained some pretty serious injuries for. Arnold Goodstein, along with 2 additional occupants, were rescued by several neighbors and paramedics from a marshy remote area behind the 3-story home. The individuals were reached by emergency workers in kayaks. One person was air evacuated to a hospital. The other 2, who have not been yet identified, were brought to the Medical University of South Carolina on ground. Sources close to Goodstein's family confirmed Arnold was airlifted after breaking multiple bones in his hips, legs, and feet after escaping from the 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom home. And this is Judge Diane Goodstein, who'd been walking on a nearby beach with her dogs when the house burned. You just some interesting pieces of information that connect to the story. Number one, let's just start here. Back in September, this very same judge ruled against the Trump administration, ruled against them. And I want to point out before we get into all this information, I want to show you that all these Republicans often talk about political violence and condemning things that happen across the political spectrum. And I agree. I think if political violence happens to Republicans, Democrats, Independents, whatever, it should be condemned. There's no place for that in the United States of America. But as you'll notice, and as we'll go over in just a moment, no major Republicans have come out and condemned this story or even sent their thoughts to the judge and her husband. None of them. They've all been silent, just like many of them were for Melissa Hortman. So let's quickly look at this article and we'll move on. A court blocked a South Carolina from giving voter data to Donald Trump's Department of Justice. A South Carolina judge has temporarily, this was back in September, if there's a date, yes, September 3rd, 2025, a South Carolina judge has temporarily blocked the state from giving the U.S. Department of Justice its entire voter database after a voter sued, arguing that releasing such sensitive personal information would violate state law and her constitutional rights. Judge Diane Goodstein of the First Judicial Circuit issued a temporary restraining order stopping the South Carolina Election Commission from releasing the data until at least September 10th. The order came in response to a lawsuit filed by this voter who wanted their information protected, understandably so. So just a month ago, she ruled against the Trump administration in a pretty significant case, a polarizing case, one that the Trump administration even tweeted about. This is somebody that works in Trump's Department of Justice, specifically in the civil rights. She brags about serving under Pam Bondi and Donald Trump on her Twitter profile. Her name is, hopefully I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Harmeet Dillon. She said in response to this ruling, a article from the Washington Examiner, this Justice Department and the Civil Rights Division will not stand for a state court judge's hasty nullification of our federal voting laws. I will allow nothing to stand in the way of our mandate to maintain clear voter rolls. One citizen, one vote. This was just a month ago. The Trump administration, a representative of the Trump administration, openly condemning this judge. Then a month later, her house burst into flames. And even more recently, Stephen Miller, just on the day that actually her house burst into flames after an apparent explosion, said this: "The issue before us is now very simple and clear. There's a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in this country. It's well organized and funded, and it's shielded by far-left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorneys general. The only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks." This happened the same day that her house burst into flames. And so, again, not going to speculate, not going to make a definitive conclusion as to, oh, this was a MAGA guy who did this. We don't know. It's still being investigated by authorities as an act of arson. Their initial report makes them believe that it is an act of arson, and it is very peculiar that reportedly she's getting death threats. A month ago, she rules against the Trump administration. The Trump admin is specifically targeting left-wing judges right now with their rhetoric. It's just peculiar that all of that happens and then her house bursts into flames. Could very well just be an accident that happened in the house, but I don't know. And as I mentioned, I do want to point out, because so many Republicans were talking about Charlie Kirk and political violence and condemning it. And as I mentioned, I agree. Political violence should be condemned. Totally. But then why hasn't Donald Trump even talked about the story? I mean, you scroll Donald Trump's page, it's videos of jets when he's hanging out with the Navy. It's more videos of the Navy. It's stupid ads being run on his platform. It's him talking about Al Sharpton. You saw, if you saw my video earlier today, where he's demanding that ABC and NBC have their broadcast licenses revoked. Why hasn't Donald Trump talked about the story? Why hasn't Donald Trump even reached out to the judge? Why hasn't Donald Trump put out a statement? Why hasn't any major